Good morning, nuts and bolts listener. Here we are on another Friday. How these weeks just fly. It's just fascinating. I mean, we are fast and furiously approaching the end of July, and 1 month just seems to run into another. Today, our topic is digital meeting etiquette. And you might be wondering, why do we even have to have this as a conversation? But I think with the hybrid working environment, we've all experienced the increase in digital meetings. And I mean, statistics have shown that we have increased our online meetings by 300%. So we are cramming in way more meetings than we used to in face-to-face working environment or in-person working environments. So if we just look at the word and we start off with the word etiquette, it's really about behavior, polite behavior in a social gathering where one actually says, this is the way we would like to see people behave. And not referring now specifically to digital meetings, but generally, when we engage with one another, there are 5 common etiquettes that we always look for or appreciate in each other. And sometimes we take them for granted, but nowadays those things shouldn't be taken for granted. So the first one is to always say thank you and being polite. And I'm sure you've experienced that very often people don't even thank you. The second one is to really give generous compliments, but from the heart and not just saying it because of the fact of saying them. But if you do, give them generously and richly, but be authentic. The third one is listen before speaking. And that is an etiquette that applies, be that digitally or whenever you meet with somebody in person. It is really about balancing the listening and the speaking. Not over speaking or not speaking over somebody, not only speaking about you. So, really also making it about the other person and inquiring. Speaking with kindness and consideration when actually speaking, because how does this affect the other person and what is the intent of the conversation that you're having or the words that you're speaking. And the fifth one, which I know some people appreciate or value and others don't, but it is an etiquette, is to be punctual, to arrive at your meetings on time. And as I say, these are 5 etiquettes that are normal social etiquettes, regardless if you are now meeting in person or digitally. I would go and summarize these 5 etiquettes by saying it's about respect, consideration, and honesty. So those are the 3 words I would honestly use to describe the word etiquette. But let's talk a bit more about digital meeting etiquette. And I guess we've never had such a guideline, and it's come about through the last 2 years or 2.5 years with the pandemic. We've learned what is acceptable and what is not acceptable. And of course, we've all heard and seen these videos about digital meetings that are funny, where people can get up and are not dressed from the bottom up, or, take their laptops to their bathrooms or have a shower while having a meeting, or cooking dinner while having a meeting. And the question, so as much as we find them funny, they are sadly the truth. We are doing things during meetings, during digital meetings, that we would not do in normal meetings. And to be honest, they have actually not changed. They shouldn't change. You are still having a meeting. So if you're going to honor, respect, consideration, and honesty, you need to show up the same way as you did in a normal in-person meeting. I mean, you wouldn't go and cook while you're in a normal meeting. you wouldn't go and do certain things. So really, one has to just keep that in the back of one's mind. So I want to leave you with 11 tips that I found, and I suppose they're not tips, but really just also reminders for ourselves on how to behave in a digital environment. And I'm sure what I'm going to share with you is not going to be anything new. You've all heard about it. But for some reason, we somehow expect it from others, but it's okay if we don't do it. And that's, I think, where the transgression comes in, that it's not okay. Because the more you do it, you're giving the other person the right to do it. And somehow, before you know it, this behavior, this norm has crept in that it's okay, where it's actually not okay. So hence, let's talk about this. The first one is, like I said, behave as like you would go to a normal in-person meeting, not just a digital meeting. So the same way. So that would include no eating in work environment meetings. I mean, very seldom would you actually sit in a meeting with your team or any other person and actually eat, unless it's perhaps over a lunchtime period, and that is part of the arrangement that we are meeting over lunch and everybody may eat. But generally, it is not acceptable to be eating during a digital meeting. You wouldn't take phone calls if you would be in a meeting. You would have your phones on silent, and you would either, if it depending on the urgency of the call, excuse yourself and step outside and take the call, or you would phone the person back later. In digital meetings, we don't do that. We sometimes still, while we're in a meeting, we just mute ourselves and then answer a call. What are you saying to the other person? I mean, it's a very big sign of disrespect. So the same applies here. You can see who's phoning you. Is it urgent? Please excuse yourself and then take the call. If not, it can wait. And this sounds also funny, but wear work-related clothes. So no gym clothes or pajamas or anything like that. And you might laugh, but I really had a client arrive in a dressing gown to a meeting, and it was quite flabbergasted, or I was quite flabbergasted and quite distracted, to be honest. And naturally, your bias does go array on when you're seeing somebody in their pajamas or a dressing gown. The second item is really mute yourself. So even if you are not speaking, mute yourself, because there often is background noise or sounds that are happening, or as we know, working from home, the odd person does suddenly, sporadically, unsurprisingly pop into the room. So if you are not speaking, get into the habit of unmuting yourself. And yes, we'll all have the common sentence of you are on mute as people are speaking. So there again, it's that discipline is I'm muting myself, I'm listening, and I need to say something, so I'm unmuting myself. The third one is there are always inevitable emergencies that will happen in a meeting. That can happen in person or digitally. And if a situation like that happens, think how you would treat it in an in-person meeting. You would excuse yourself, you would apologize, and you would leave the meeting for a moment. The same happens digitally. You in a chat box, depending who's speaking, if you're the speaker or if somebody else is speaking, you in the chat box would just share that you'd have to excuse yourself, and you share for how long. You don't have to share necessarily what the emergency is, and then take yourself off camera. It also gives an indication that the person has left the room, and then when you come back, you participate again. The fourth one is minimize distractions. And I know that's not always easy when working from home. We do have other people living with us. We have animals that are there, but really try and minimize the distractions and not perhaps have your meetings in the middle of the dining room or the lounge where everybody is also walking past, and it's like in the middle of a bazaar. So really, again, limit those distractions if as much as you can. Preferably put a sign on the outside of your door saying, I'm in a meeting from then and then, so I'll be back then. And it again shows respect towards the other person you are meeting with, and also keeps your attention going. So I've again experienced a situation where I've had a client, and I was coaching them, and it was super distracting. We couldn't actually continue with our coaching because there was so much background music playing, and then we had the two children sitting on the lap. It was just impossible to have a conversation with the client. And those are the kind of things, I understand situations or crises happen, but then try and reschedule it. Don't have the meeting just for the sake of having the meeting. The fourth one is really observe your professional backgrounds. So either keep it the way it is, like the original is sometimes the best, or choose your professional backgrounds, not making them too animated or too plastic. We still know that there's a bit of shadow or movement when we do certain backgrounds. So really be careful of what you're choosing, and make sure it fits the audience that you are meeting with, so that it fits who you are engaging with. So just because you like a funky background, it might not be appropriate to the meeting. Remember, all these items add up to for the audience that you are participating with or talking to have an perception of you, to take you serious, to find that credibility. So as much as you might not be aware of it, those things do matter. And have a few in your back pocket that you can change them for whatever meetings you are going to. And the same with the background that's important, or the environment that you're in, is to make sure that the lighting and the sound is correct. You don't want to sit in some glaring sunlight outside, or have super loud noise and that kind of thing. Having a meeting in the car depends on the meeting. Would you normally have a meeting in the car or while driving? And if so, yes. So it depends again what it is. So be very selective on where you would meet with people. The sixth one is really dress up and show up. Just because it's a digital meeting, it does not mean that we do not dress up. You are still in a work environment setting, and people still look at you, observe you, can see you, and assess you. And it takes, sadly, up to about 7 seconds for people to look at you and make an assessment of you. So you very quickly are decided, she's professional, she's not professional, I can take her serious or not serious. That's 7 seconds. And if people have a certain perception of you, to undo that is very, very difficult. So make sure you show up and dress up accordingly to the meeting, the same as you would do in an in-person meeting. So the same applies there. You would not arrive in your gym gear to a work meeting when you were in the office. So why now? The seventh one is raise your hand when speaking. And I guess we've all become a bit better on it, because in the beginning we used to often speak over each other, not knowing when the other person was finished speaking. So we started talking, they started a sentence, we started a sentence, this person stopped, okay, you carry on. And it's a very awkward space because everybody's train of thought is interrupted. So two things can be done. The one is to raise your hand so that whoever is chairing the person or managing the person knows that so-and-so wants to say something, and then can make sure that you have an adequate time to speak and voice your opinion. The second one is, and that's where it's absolutely crucial, is to keep your cameras on, because as you keep your cameras on, you can actually see, if you are actively engaged, that the person has naturally come to the end of their sentence and it is time for you to speak. If the cameras are off, then the one person is finished speaking and suddenly this voice out of nowhere arrives. And again, in an in-person meeting, you would not sit with a paper bag over your head, literally. You would see each other. There would be eye contact. You would see each other's body language. Hence, it's very important that you raise your hand, give each other enough room to speak, and also keep your cameras on. The eighth one is, and that's perhaps my personal bugbear, is do not engage in other work while you are in a meeting. It was a challenge when we did it in person, and it's a challenge now even more in digital meetings. In person, secretly, silently, quickly, we sent a WhatsApp, an email, all that, but it was more visible, so people wouldn't do it so much. It was way more minimized. Now, with the digital technology, you can be in a meeting, you can look at this on a website, you can answer an email here and do all these things. However, your eyeballs are obviously moving and changing, maybe even your whole head. We assume always we're going to get away with it and nobody's going to notice. We do our best to keep staring at the camera and while doing this, but to be honest, the others can notice it and see it. And we expect it from others. So we need to honor that same, and not multitask during a meeting. Because honestly, you are listening with half an ear and you're doing something else, and then you come back and all of that. And it's a big time management issue as well. You have often multiple meetings because people haven't listened or participated. The ninth one is be punctual to meetings. As you would do in-person meetings, show up 5 minutes earlier, a few minutes earlier. Don't just slide in on the moment of the meeting, but really be punctual. Technology does play up occasionally. Sometimes we don't know why certain things happen. And next thing, you get a whole upgrade happening and you can't go into your apps. So always be punctual. Make sure all of your items are working, that you can do that. It's actually a very lame excuse to say, I couldn't get into the meeting because of whatever. So before it was, I wasn't punctual because of traffic. Now you don't have traffic. So it's really being sure you are on time. The 10th is start with your videos on. When you engage or enter a room in a meeting, always have your video on so that you can greet everyone, be polite, say hi, connect with the people. And then if your tradition is that cameras are off in meetings, then everybody goes off. But in the beginning, it is always great to see faces, because it also helps everybody to see how are you, where are you, what's happening. If you were in an in-person meeting, you would also have to show up and be there and people could see you. You can't also choose not to be seen. So the same happens here. People want to see you so that they also can support you if they so need to, and just be there and provide empathy and compassion and feel for you whatever is happening. And the 11th one, the final one I want to leave you with today, is when it comes to digital meetings, you do have to slow down your talking a little bit. You cannot speak as fast or as quickly or animated as you would maybe in an in-person meeting. There's sometimes a bit of a delay or a lag when it comes to technology. People have got to hear. So slow down as you are speaking a little bit. It's not huge slowing down, but just really slowing down a little bit, just that pace. And it helps you also to be more articulative of what you are saying. So, ladies and gentlemen, nuts and bolts listener, those were my 11 tips on digital meeting etiquette. I hope you've thought about some of them, and when you go into your meetings, either later today or tomorrow, you just embrace them and think, how can I connect with others more? These are still convenient meetings to do them online. Sometimes geographically, we're not able to meet, but it's really being there, and you can participate, engage. You can still read people's body language and everything that's happening for them digitally. I mean, you're picking up mine, and I'm here and I'm fully engaged, and you can notice that as if I would not be. So, have an amazing week, and I'll chat to you next week where we will have another interesting guest. Take good care and look after yourself. Goodbye.